Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Dr. Will Cole. Dr. Will Cole is a leading functional medicine expert. He consults people around the world via webcam at www.drwillcole.com and locally in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He specializes in clinically investigating underlying factors of chronic disease and customizing health programs for thyroid issues, autoimmune conditions, hormonal dysfunctions, digestive disorders, and brain problems. Dr. Cole was named one of the top 50 functional medicine and integrative doctors in the nation and is a health expert for Mind, Body, Green, and Goop. Dr. Cole is the author of the upcoming book, The Inflammation Spectrum, in which he explores how inflammation exists on a spectrum within the body, the various systems it can affect, and how you can discover your individual food triggers to overcome chronic inflammation. He is also the author of Ketoterian, in which he melds the powerful benefits of a ketogenic diet with a plant-based one. I am so excited to welcome Dr. Will Cole to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Wow. So you've really been up to a lot. You've written the book Ketoterian, and now you have the inflammation spectrum coming out. How did you ever even get started into this health and wellness industry?
Well, it started a long time ago. I grew up in a home that was interested in wellness before it was the industry that it is today. You know, wellness is quite massive, and you look at Expo West in Anaheim or Expo East, like in Maryland. So it's just quite a massive industry. But in the 80s and 90s, I grew up in the rural Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh, and was definitely not a mecca of wellness, nor is it still today a mecca of wellness, where it's like a lot of fast food restaurants, and that's about it in Cowfields. But my parents were interested in wellness, so I grew up going to like the local health food store and drinking like weird adaptogenic tonics and mud water, mineral-rich mud water, basically, and like just sprouted this and raw that and organic that. So that was a formative time in my life, obviously, of seeing and being mindful of the food supply and food industry and way that we ate versus the way that the standard American ate. And then that evolved to me being a conventional vegan in my teens. And that evolved into me being ketotarian, or mostly plant-based ketogenic book, which is the title of my first book, Ketoterian. That I talk about that health journey in the book, and I evolved into being still mostly plant-based, but bringing in some of these other clean keto foods like wild caught fish, organic pasture-raised eggs, ghee, but still being, again, predominantly plant-centric. So that's really was my evolution personally, but that also coincided with me getting formal training in functional medicine. So I went to an integrative school in California, in Los Angeles, called Southern California University of Health Sciences. And it's an integrative medicine school, a health science school, where there's MDs and DCs and naturopaths and acupuncture, oriental medicine doctors, all kind of there learning their different modalities and different disciplines. So I was trained by amazing minds there, and I heard of a guy called Datis Karazian who had gone to my school. He was older than I was. Who's still today, Datis Karazian is one of the leading functional medicine minds in our space. And he had gone to my school, so I was kind of aware of it through hearing about him and what he was talking about, this field of healthcare called functional medicine. And I never really looked back since. I graduated knowing I wanted to be in that space. I started writing about it early on, and that's when we started seeing patients online before telehealth was really a thing, and webcam consultations was even a thing. And I've been doing that for 11 years now, where almost all of my patients are online via webcam, where I get to get them functional medicine guidance on their health. So that's my story.
That is super cool. And I can
Yeah.
so relate to your background. And unlikely in Ohio, I'm growing up with health nut parents as well. And I could relate to the concoctions. My dad would make all these concoctions, and he would, sometimes I'd be like, Dad, what is that? And he would stick his tongue out. It would be either green or like a bright red, some mixture. And and then here I am years later doing the same thing. And I really appreciate the fact that you grew up that way, because so many of us did not out there. And I just wonder, do you feel that that's what really led you then eventually to jump into the health field?
It definitely was a component to it. Now, obviously, a lot of people grow up that way that don't get into the health space, but it inspired me in that way. I didn't know formally how it would look, but I love talking about something I'm passionate about. I love writing about it. So I started writing and speaking about it early on. And I think that's what propelled me seeing predominantly patients online, because it was patients in other states and countries that didn't necessarily have a functional medicine practitioner that they liked in their town or city. But yeah, so it definitely, I'm assuming, formed a lot of opinions, or formed my perception and perspective on the world as far as food and wellness is concerned. But then a lot of other factors came about. So I think another formative aspect of my journey was seeing autoimmune conditions on both sides of my family, and knowing, okay, look, like my extended family, and then wanting to do everything that I could to help them and to improve my health as much as I had control of myself. So that was also a part of it too, which is the opposite of the wellness world. It's someone who's struggling with a health issue that really doesn't have many tools other than, take this medication, see you later sort of thing. And I wanted to kind of dig deeper into these sort of root causes of why people have health problems.
So how did your diet then evolve over time to where you are now? I mean, Ketoterian, what does that mean?
Yeah, so Ketoterian is my play on words, right? It's a Ketoterian, but it's one word. And it's this amalgamation, this sort of alchemy between the best of being plant-based and the best of being ketogenic. And it is, when you look at two seemingly opposite worlds, like the keto world and the plant-based world, like they may be at odds with each other in many ways. That's, if you look on Twitter, the armpit of social media, you will find that there's a lot of wars going on with like the carnivore world fighting the plant-based world and all this craziness. And I wrote Ketoterian to bring the keto world to the middle, bring the plant-based world to the middle, and then bring the disillusioned person to the middle, to see like, okay, this is how you do both ways of eating in a way that I believe is sustainable, that's practical, that's based in lifestyle, that's going to appeal to most people as far as being able to do this long term. And it's flexible and intuitive enough for people to kind of say, okay, I want to be predominantly plant-based. I want to do mostly vegan keto with a few other options, or maybe entirely vegan keto. But then I bring up the conversation pieces in the book to say, okay, the bioavailability of certain B vitamins, the bioavailability of certain omega fatty acids from a clinical nutrition standpoint, to say, okay, are you open to bring in some eggs? Are you open to bring in some wild caught fish? But still, again, be predominantly plant centric if you want to. And that's really the conversation that I'm having to both sides of the conversation in the book, so people can go keto, but do keto in a way that's clean and sustainable for themselves and the planet. And I feel like as well, people can learn about the exciting science of it. I mean, it's so exciting. The impact that beta hydroxybutyrate, the ketone that our body produces during ketosis. Yes, it's a way to become a fat burner. Yes, that's what excites people about the ketogenic diet, to become a fat burner, to get metabolic flexibility. Without a doubt, that is a major part of the book and major part of the science around the ketogenic diet. But what excites me about the ketogenic diet and the research around it is the fact that beta hydroxybutyrate acts as an epigenetic modulator, meaning it does cool things for our health. One of them is lowering inflammation levels. So it downregulates things like NF-kappa B and COX-2 and NLRP3 inflammasome, basically these pro-inflammatory cytokines that are high in so many people with inflammatory health issues. Well, beta hydroxybutyrate, the ketone, helps to lower that inflammation and upregulate these pro-antioxidant, anti-disease pathways like the AMPK pathway and the NRF2 pathway. So that's that science stuff, like the anti-inflammatory, antioxidant science of beta hydroxybutyrate, is really what inspired me to write my second book, The Inflammation Spectrum, because of the power that the ketone has to lower inflammation levels. So the inflammation spectrum is a deep dive into this concept of the inflammation spectrum that I talk about in Ketoterian, but I was able to really give a whole book to this topic of how so many health problems are inflammatory in nature, like autoimmune conditions and hormonal problems and anxiety and depression and brain fog and fatigue and metabolic blood sugar issues. These all have inflammation in common. So yes, beta hydroxybutyrate, the ketone, can help lower inflammation. Ketoterian is a really anti-inflammatory way of eating, but there's so many other ways to lower inflammation levels too. So people can really explore the wide world of ways to lower inflammation, to live a long, healthy, vibrant life in the Inflammation Spectrum book, and educating them on what the inflammation spectrum is. So it's this continuum of sort of low-grade symptoms like anxiety, or like low-grade anxiety, fatigue, and maybe some digestive problems. And then on the other end of that inflammation spectrum is like full-blown, health problems like autoimmune conditions or diabetes or like all these things. And then there's everything in between on that continuum. So I wanted people to realize that all of these things have inflammation in common. And then most importantly, what do we do about it?
I love it. This is fascinating to me. With the ketosis, how hard is it for somebody to get into ketosis being a Ketoterian? Is it simple? Is it complicated? Lead us through the process.
Sure. So I wanted to keep it simple. Like there's two different tracks in Ketoterian. There's the keeping it simple option, and then there's like the advanced track, is so to speak. And even the advanced track isn't advanced. It's really just practical stuff. But I wanted people who could get away with keeping it simple to just keep it simple. So I have these 5 or 6 rules or ways of eating called Ketoterianisms. There's keeping your carbs low, keeping your healthy fats high. When you have a non-starchy vegetable, add a healthy fat. When you have a healthy fat, add a non-starchy vegetable. Eat when you're hungry, eat until you're satiated. Most people reading Ketoterian, if they do those rules and use the recipes and the meal plans in the book, they're going to be in ketosis. They're going to get the fat burning, the anti-inflammatory, the pro-antioxidant benefits of ketosis just by doing that. Now, I also realize that's not everybody. So we may have to adjust some things where people need to hone in and tweak it a bit more than that. So we have like the advanced track for that, where they can, if they want to track their macros, they can do that. And maybe they are more carb sensitive than other people, and they need to decrease their carbs a little bit more and bring their healthy fats up a bit more. Maybe they need to lean into intermittent fasting or time restricted feeding, and I teach how to do that in Ketoterian. So I think start off simple, and then if you need to tweak it a bit more based on your own bio individuality, then you can do so.
I love that. I learned that in the Integrative School of Nutrition, and I'm a big believer in it because what works for me may not be working for somebody else, because there's just so many factors that come into it. And in your book, you're talking about like Ketoterian, Pescatarian. Can we do a little of both then? I could have some fish. And
oh, yeah. That's why on the cover of Ketoterian, it says the mostly, in parentheses, plant-based plan to burn fat, crush cravings, and lower inflammation, all that stuff. It's the term, like I was very clear on the cover that it was mostly plant-based, because plant-based is a funny definition, right? I mean, I think of plant-based as being mostly plants. It's plant-based, but it's not entire plants. But some people in the vegan community and the vegetarian community consider plant-based to be only the vegan diet. I don't think of it as that, but I was erring on the side of transparency, that saying mostly plant-based would be very clear that we are giving many vegan keto options. Like majority of the recipes are vegan keto, but there is vegetarian keto options and pescatarian keto options. So I bring up the conversation and showing the science of the bioavailability of certain nutrients to say, hey, are you open to the vegan? I'm speaking to the vegan here. Are you open to bringing in some eggs? Are you open to bringing in some fish, but still being predominantly plant-centric? So yeah, that's how I would advocate it. That's how that I eat it. But I realize that some people, for ethical reasons or religious reasons or whatever reasons, they don't want to have any fish. They don't have any eggs. So I wanted them to teach them the best way to go vegan, in my opinion, would be to do the vegan keto options in Ketoterian.
And I love that, because I'm going to call you a Unitarian. You're unifying everybody.
Yeah.
And I know it can be an emotional topic. I had a guest, Alexandria Jameson, that she did that whole McDonald's movie, was part of it, you know, where they were supersizing. She was totally vegetarian, but she was craving meat sometimes. And her following, when they found out that she was craving meat and eating meat secretly, sometimes she just wanted it, she lost half of them overnight. So I think it's better to just bring us all to the table to have a discussion about what our different needs are, you know, versus feeling like we have to be secretive that maybe we want some fish or some eggs.
Yeah, totally. I've heard a lot of that happening in the vegan world. Like I actually reached out to one of them, what was her name? Ravana, I think was her name. And she was one of the big vegan influencers, and she got vilified for like having fish in a restaurant. You know, I gave her a copy of Ketoterian to let her know my journey on that. And that does no good. These sort of food wars. What I try to do in both of the books is to educate people on how to find food peace and to quit fighting over food.
Right.
This is crazy that people are debating so nasty about food. It's like, let's come together. Let's be positive. Let's realize what we have in common. And if something's working for you, great. Like if it's making your labs look great, if you enjoy the foods you're having, really, what's the big problem here? As long as we're eating sustainably, eating consciously, eating responsibly. I mean, there's so many ways to get meat and get fish that's sustainably sourced. Restorative farming is doing amazing efforts to really preserve our earth and be good stewards of the planet in ways that I would say, when you talk about restorative farming, that are doing way better than the sort of mass factory farmed vegan options. I mean, look at the amount of destruction that the factory farming is having as far as the genetic modification of corn and soy and the mass produce of these plant-based, and then the shipping of these foods around the world, the fossil fuel that takes. Going to a local farmer that's doing restorative farming for some grass-fed beef is actually good for the planet, and I would argue good for someone's health, but you still can be predominantly plant-centric too.
I love that, being all inclusive and, you know, just trying to find solutions. And also, I think when you're more inclusive, you're bringing more people to the table and having a conversation around health, which is what we really need.
Totally. Yeah. People don't need food wars anymore. And I think that we get sometimes caught up in these small details and realize that this is just stressing people out and overwhelming the layperson and the common person that's not in the wellness world. They're like, what the heck should I eat? Because all of these conflicting sides to it. And Dr. Google, being this sort of fickle, endless vortex of conflicting information, is not doing people good. And I think it's sometimes hard to go past that confusion and actually find out what's right for you, which is why I wrote The Inflammation Spectrum, my second book, is to kind of cut through that food confusion to find out what your body loves and what your body hates.
I love that. I love that. And you're so right about Dr. Google. I think, I mean, I know I do Google a lot of things so I can kind of research subjects. And I told my mom recently to just look at, contact Dr. Google. And she's 80 and she literally thought that there was a doctor named Dr. Google. It was so cute. And I was like, no, Mom, no. Let me lead you in the direction of what I was trying to say. But
Yeah, that's funny.
yeah, and so cute. But I am bringing her up to speed on some of these things that we're talking about today. And one of them is inflammation. This is serious. And I think it's kind of like a silent killer. How can we recognize the signs of inflammation and being inflamed?
Yeah. So inflammation is definitely that common link between almost every health problem we face as a world today. So you look at things like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, autoimmune conditions, to things that don't seem inflammatory, like anxiety and depression and brain fog, fatigue. The studies suggest that they have an inflammatory component or full-blown inflammatory conditions in some cases too. So it is that commonality, and we need to talk about it. So it's both sides of the coin. From a functional medicine terminology standpoint, it's something's upstream to inflammation, something's driving it. But then because the body's so brilliantly interconnected, inflammation in one area will create inflammatory patterns and dysfunctions in the other areas of the body. So it's definitely something that needs to be talked about. I think people should kind of ask the question, where is my health? What's going on? And kind of take an inventory. And that's why I put the inflammation spectrum quiz in the book so people can ask themselves. And the questions are all questions I ask patients. So they're just adapted from functional medicine principles and concepts to get to the root cause of why they feel the way they do. We actually have the quiz on our website. If people don't want to necessarily get the book right away, they can just take the quiz for free. It's at drwillcole.com. And they could take the inflammation spectrum quiz, and we go through the systems of the body. And another word for functional medicine is systems medicine. So we're going through the systems like the hormones and the brain and the digestion and the musculoskeletal system and the detox system, and kind of seeing, where am I at on the inflammation spectrum? Is it mild? Is it severe? What areas are the most problematic? And we're raising questions that maybe people don't even think of as being problematic, but they are like check engine lights, and they're signs that something is going on underneath the hood that's misfiring, dysfunctional. And that's what inflammation is. It's out of balance. Just like with a car that's not working right, the check engine light comes on. You don't just cover up the check engine light and keep on driving. Let's hope not. But that fatigue or that anxiety.
No, I think some of us do.
Yeah, it's not gonna take you very far. But the anxiety, the fatigue, the brain fog, the digestive problems, these are all check engine lights. Let's look underneath the hood. Let's see what's causing that to be on in the first place. So that's really, I think people need to take action on their health first. And then maybe it is finding a functional medicine doctor, or, getting a support group online or whatever it is, to start really taking your health seriously, no matter where you're at on the inflammation spectrum.
So when this becomes chronic and systemic, your inflammation, because you've let it go, you've let that check engine light go and go because you didn't recognize that it was a warning signal of inflammation. How long does it take to reverse that? Like if I went on your Ketoterian diet, how long would it take me to, let's say I'm really inflamed, to get that to kind of turn around?
Well, it's interesting because the research suggests that when someone's diagnosed with a health problem, like when it's like diagnosable, like an autoimmune condition or diabetes, it's on average 7 to 10 years prior to that diagnosis. It was when these things start brewing. So that inflammation storm that I talk about in the book is brewing for up to a decade prior to that diagnosis, research suggests. So it's gonna,
wow,
it's not, meaning if someone's diagnosed with diabetes, it didn't happen the day before. If someone's diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, it didn't happen the day before. Yes, with autoimmunity, you can have like triggers and flares that seem more obvious, but the reality is the infrastructure of dysfunction began way before you were diagnosed in most cases. So how long it takes to start improving that depends on how much is going on, how long you've been going through it, and then how compliant you are with being in alignment with wellness for you. So I'll tell you, the studies, they suggest you could start seeing changes in your microbiome, your gut bacteria, like improving gut health pretty quickly. You can start seeing inflammatory cascades, like these biomarkers that we run for patients, like CRP, an inflammatory marker, homocysteine, an inflammatory marker. You can see those improve pretty quickly. You can see like lipids improve pretty quickly. You can see blood sugar and insulin. Triglycerides, another sign that there's dysglycemia and imbalance and inflammation. You can see that improve pretty quickly. So you can see trajectory-wise things improving within weeks. But the long-term wellness, like infrastructural healing, mechanism, like restoration, that takes time. I mean, that could take 18 to 24 months easily for the average person going through a real health problem. But they're moving towards that light. They're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and repairing these things that take time, 7 to 10 years or more, to really to get to the place where they're at today. It's not going to be healed entirely overnight.
Well, what are 3 just simple things that people could do right away that you could tell the audience today to decrease inflammation in their body?
I would say number 1 is lowering the amount of sugar that they're eating. So sugar in all its various forms, right? There's sugar, and then there's like the euphemisms for sugar, and there's tons of different vernacular for sugar. And ones that sound more natural sounding, and so you have to like really understand the ingredients that you're of any labels that you're buying. So any added sugar, start to decrease that. That's going to help improve balance and lower inflammation. Number 2, you're going to want to fill in that caloric gap. You're taking less sugar, and not just sugar. I should say this. It's things that turn into sugar too, like lots of grains, a lot of starches. Limit that as well. And then start bringing up healthy fats. So things like avocados and olives and their oils, start bringing more of those in. Have good, clean, non-starchy vegetables, wild-caught fish, in place of these refined carbohydrates and added sweeteners. And then third is something that I would say, if you want 3, I would say it's not directly about food. It's going to be mindfulness and stress management.
Oh yeah.
Because you can eat the perfect food under the sun. You could be chowing down on kale salads and chugging back kombucha, but if you're serving your body a big slice of stress every day, you're going to be counteracting all these good healthy foods that you're trying to eat. And in some ways, in some people, doesn't apply to everybody, but I think in some cases it's almost better to eat not so healthy but not be stressed than eat clean but be riddled with stress. Because stress raises up inflammation in the body. So the body says, oh, I need to bring up cortisol to dampen that inflammation, because cortisol is like an anti-inflammatory. So the body's trying to deal with that stress response by bringing that inflammation levels down. So stress, and that brings up a big part of the inflammation spectrum book, is that you can't heal a body you hate. You cannot shame or stress your way into wellness. And ultimately, it's people realizing that this is not about another diet. We don't need another diet in our culture. We need to love our body enough, respect ourselves enough to feed our body with good things. And when you realize, hey, this food makes me feel fantastic, it's not about a diet or a fad program. This is about really just using food to feel great. And avoiding foods that don't make you feel great isn't punitive or restrictive or diety. It's just, no, I'd rather feel great than I miss that food. And it's that transition that people need to make and heal their relationship with their body, heal their relationship with food and themselves. To me, that's a big thing, but that's like the third thing that I think should be 1. Because if you start to respect yourself, then you will just naturally want to eat better, because you feel better about yourself, you respect yourself, and you want to use food to feel great.
And that was so well said. I love everything you just said. That's amazing. Amazing.
Thanks.
Loving your body. And also, I found, because I just went through menopause, is that some of the hormones I had before that would help me deal with stress better are diminished. So you have to be even more mindful, or your cortisol really starts to spike.
Yeah.
And so I started walking away from, like, instead of engaging with something stressful, now I just walk away from it because I can't have it. I can't have the
Yeah.
stress,
Yeah.
because then you don't sleep well. You feel like you're blowing up like a blowfish. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy how stress could affect you. And because I do fitness competitions, I can literally, if I'm stressed, my coach knows it. She looks at the picture. She's like, all right, what are your stress levels? You're not telling me the truth. You're puffy.
Yeah, it definitely impacts aldosterone and cortisol, throws off that brain adrenal, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Yeah, it's something that we measure in functional medicine and in labs. You can see that circadian rhythm of cortisol. And someone that's under mental, emotional stress, you'll see that all like a roller coaster of cortisol, and that's going to impact your blood sugar and your blood pressure potentially. Um, and then also physiological stress too, like these chronic gut issues or viral or mold issues that can also impact cortisol too. So you deal with all of those things, the mental, emotional, as well as the physical reasons of why your body is going through inflammation in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great conversation today. Now, you said mental and emotional. What are some ways mentally and emotionally that we can decrease our stress when we're feeling stress that you would
Yeah.
recommend?
Yeah. And this is a interesting topic because human beings have made it till today because they could handle a certain amount of grit, right? If you look at the totality of human history, a lot of us are living pretty good compared to our ancestors. So in some ways, it's like we need to have a little bit more grit and know how to like handle the stress better. But it's not that type of stress. It's not like I'm being chased by a tiger and like I don't know if where my next meal is going to be. Many of the world still struggles with that. But I'm saying this chronic, insidious stressor that is out of alignment with our biochemistry. So researchers estimate that about our 99% of our genes haven't changed in 10,000 years, but yet our world has changed very dramatically in a very short period of time when compared to the totality of human existence. So it's this mismatch between genetics, our DNA, and epigenetics, the lifestyle things that our genes are exposed to, has this mismatch is growing more and more, the disparity. So that is what researchers are saying as being a major driver of what's triggering these genetic predispositions for different inflammatory issues and autoimmune problems. Because our genes haven't changed, so why are we seeing more and more health problems? Better diagnostics maybe plays a part of it, like we're just catching things better, but it doesn't explain the full breadth of why people are dealing with chronic health problems, even increasingly just in our lifetime. So what people can start to do about stress is, I would say I got on that tangent because of what we're looking at and why I feel what type of stress I think is a problem. It's this insidious stress that doesn't go away. It's a lot of it has to do with our relationship with technology.
I
Uh,
know, right?
and it's a double-edged sword, just like Dr. Google. Dr. Google can be used for good and be used for not good. That's the same way with stress. It's like our technology can be used for good, but it can also be used for not good. People, it's impacting their circadian rhythms, it's impacting their sleep, it's impacting their social relationships, which impacts stress. It is creating this sort of isolation, but you feel connected, but it's not real connection. And it's feeding into all this, plus the blue light and the impact that that's having on our body and our eyes and all of that. So I think we need to find a balance with technology. And we need to root ourselves in the present moment. And it's sometimes hard to be rooted in the present moment when you're always thinking about, we have this sort of FOMO culture, right? This fear of missing out. We need to get JOMO, the joy of missing out, and be okay with unplugging and detaching and being in the present moment, being unplugged. I was at a men's retreat in California recently. They asked me to come, and we basically were off of our phones for the whole week. It was really nice. And it was like not too long ago, like in my lifetime, this was just normal life. But then when I left, I had some work stuff. I did some podcasts for the inflammation spectrum after that. And I was at LAX at the airport. I looked up and my wife said, look around us. Everyone was on their phone. Everyone. staring at their phone. I'm like, this is like Wall-E. Have you ever seen that Pixar film, Wall-E, where humans have no like bone density anymore? They can't even get up because they're just lethargic sitting on technology. I think Wall-E's prophetic, that Pixar film, and where we're headed if we don't do something different. Because it is creepy to see in such a short period of time, what, 10 years, 11 years, we all are, you can't go into a public place. We don't know what it's like to just be still and not be entertained.
People
We
aren't
don't know.
comfortable with it because they're not used to it anymore.
Yeah, they actually have phone as an addiction. So it's our brains are being slowly rewired in about a decade. And we need to start realizing this is not sustainable. And we need to start having what's going to be a balanced relationship for this amazing tool. We have amazing data and information. Like, let's use it for good, but we need to find our checks and balances in that regulatory system for ourselves. Because I don't think the industries at large are going to be finding out that regulatory system for us.
Wow. Well, let me ask, I have a couple more things I want to kind of ask and dive into. Now, I think it's very important. I'm the sisterhood of sweat. Of course, I think it's important to break a sweat and exercise, but can we do too much?
Certainly. So let's do an example. I love sweating too. Humans, generally speaking, need to be sweating more. So I'm all for sisterhood of sweat, and let's bring brotherhood of sweat and peoplehood of sweat,
Yes.
whatever that is. So I think generally speaking, we need to be sweating more, without a doubt. But I would say there are some people that are maybe sweating because they're doing too much of something that's not good for them. So, for example, people with adrenal fatigue, which is really a poor term for it. It's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the brain adrenal communication line. It's really a brain-based issue. That's what adrenal fatigue is. So adrenal fatigue really doesn't have much to do with the adrenals themselves, but a brain-based stress response. It's abnormal. So we measure this on urine and saliva tests. We look at the cortisol awakening response, or the CAR, and we can gauge that. If someone's doing too much like high intensity or too much exercise, or doing a lot of running, a lot of cycling, a lot of exertion, and they're not resting enough, if someone's dealing with this fatigue, they'll pay for it later. And you'll hear people explain it in that way. I feel worse the day after. And it's not like a normal, like I worked out and your body's rebuilding after that. It's they're actually having a flare up of their fatigue and their symptoms after that workout. That's just too much too soon. That's not saying that they shouldn't exercise, or that they shouldn't move. They just need to maybe be doing more restorative stuff for a while to find that balance. Because more isn't always better with anything in life. Sometimes we need to find that equilibrium, and we like to think more is better when it comes to something healthy like working out. But it's finding that yin and the yang. So I think that restorative yoga or Tai Chi, or maybe some water activity, something like that where it isn't so grueling, and find time to relax. Maybe you need to do more meditation. Maybe you look at how you're handling stress when you're not working out, because some people are just taxed too much when it comes to that constant movement, constant working out.
I love that. And I think that's pretty important, because a lot of the time we think of, if something is good, a lot is better, like you said. And that also comes with the fact that we have a nation now drinking way too much coffee. Now, what is your take? Some people are yes for coffee if it's organic and there's no bird caca. Other people are like, no coffee.
And I would put my functional medicine hat on here and say, find out what works for your body. And that's actually one of the things we talk about in the inflammation spectrum, is seeing how you do on these foods. So specifically with coffee, I would say that there are fast metabolizers and slow metabolizers of coffee. And there's research to show that the fast metabolizers of coffee do fine with coffee. As long as it's good sourced and organic and not have the pesticides and stuff, that they can drink a couple cups a day, even a little bit more, and get increasing benefits from it because of the antioxidants. Because coffee is not just caffeine, it's a whole food with a lot of other phytonutrients and antioxidants in it. So they're not just having a shot of caffeine, they're having this whole drink that's way more complex than just caffeine. So there's studies that show that they actually see benefits increasingly with the more that they have. But that's the opposite for people that are slow metabolizers of caffeine, that they actually see increased health problems with the more that they drink. Those are the people that they tend to feel jittery and anxious, heart palpitations. They feel miserable when they have more coffee.
Oh, okay. So
So
if
it's two
they're
different
jittery.
metabolizers. Yeah. So, and that's very simplistic, but there's a gene called CYP1A2, which is, we're more complex than any one SNP, but there are people with these gene variants that researchers are looking at. Are you a slow metabolizer, a fast metabolizer of caffeine? I talk about it in the inflammation spectrum because it's one of those foods that we want to find out what your body loves and what your body hates. So I typically do tell patients or people to go off of it for a couple of weeks just to kind of calm things down, and then try to bring it back in and see how you feel. So we definitely would experiment with it and see where you reside, whether your body says yay or nay for the coffee.
What do you do? Do you do coffee?
I do coffee. Yeah, I don't drink a lot of it, and I prefer tea. Actually, I have tea right next to me. I'll typically do like intermittent fasting. I'll have Earl Grey tea in the morning because Earl Grey tea has bergamot, which is a citrus from Calabria, and bergamot's been shown to increase autophagy, which is our cellular recycling, cellular repair mechanisms. Fasting increases autophagy as well, and so does ketosis. So I typically would do that, but I'll have coffee. I can't think of a lot. I probably have it once a week, maybe twice a week, but not
Excessive.
not excessive. Yeah.
Well, I find I did do a detox. I cut my coffee for like 35 days. The biggest thing I really noticed was I had more sustainable energy throughout the day. So I think I was either drinking too much too often, and maybe my blood sugar was crashing. Is all I was just like, because now I'm not drinking near as much, and I still feel really good.
Good. Yeah. See, we just have to find that balance, because sometimes it is not the food. It's just, are we having too much of it for our body? And that applies to a lot of foods, not just with coffee. But yeah, good point.
Why do you say that eliminating foods is freeing and it helps you recognize what feeds your mind and body?
Yeah. So I think we grabbed that from the eliminate chapter in the inflammation spectrum, that when we talk about the elimination diet, and that's still a gold standard in functional medicine, in clinical nutrition, and in other dietetic sort of world, to find out what foods work for you and what doesn't. To me, I think food confusion and not feeling good health-wise is really the most restriction you can think of. Like feeling lousy and feeling disillusioned about what foods work for you is not a place of freedom. But knowing what works for your body is food freedom. It's food peace. So that's what I meant by that. When we are eliminating during the elimination phase of the elimination diet, that the way that I prescribe it in the inflammation spectrum book, it's not to be punitive or punish your body. It's about eliminating feeling like crap. It's about eliminating inflammation. It's about eliminating food confusion. It's all about that stuff. So I just wanted a perspective shift, a paradigm shift for people to reform their relationship with food and reform their relationship with their body and themselves. So that's what I meant by that. But then obviously we're eating a wide variety of nutrient dense foods, yummy, delicious foods. So you don't have to like eat like a rabbit to be healthy, but it is going to be going off of these culprits that are probably causing you problems, but you don't know until you test what they are. But then when we reintroduce foods, you may find I can have a lot of these things, but it's these one or two things that cause me problems. But you won't know until you give yourself this food experiment. And obviously it's not just about foods too. We talk about the non-food inflammers too, like stress and toxins and sleep and that kind of stuff as well.
What is a typical day for you, starting with breakfast, the time you eat?
Yeah. So I this week is a little bit different because I've been doing this OMAD challenge for myself.
Oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
done that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 1 meal a day, 22 to 2 fasting to eating window. And part of my team, not all of my team, because they chickened out the last minute, but part of my team and I are doing the OMAD challenge, which is basically 1 meal a day, an acronym, OMAD or OMAD. That's what I've been doing. So today I haven't eaten anything. I've just had tea and water and that's it. So, and I'll break the fast this evening. And you could do that 22 to 2. Like you could do that over lunch. You could do that at breakfast. You don't have to do it in the evening. It's just easier for me because I need to make sure that I'm getting my calories in that 2-hour window, or some people do a 23 to 1 ratio. I don't want to do
But you're eating, are you doing the true OMAD where they just eat what they want during that window, or are
No.
you unable to do that and you're eating
Yeah.
healthy?
I'm not going to, I'd love that.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it be great to just go eat
But
anything you
I'm
want?
just like, I couldn't bring myself, when I did the OMAD, I couldn't bring myself to go whole hog on it.
No.
I wanted to eat healthy. I just wondered what you do.
Yeah, totally. So I eat a Ketoterian meal and make sure that I'm getting enough calories because you don't want to be hypocaloric. You want to make sure you're well nourished, well fed during that time. And the OMAD's not for everybody, but there are other ways to do that we talk about in the book so you can see. But I've tried the OMAD. But normally I don't do that. I'll do like a 6-hour eating window. I'll do a 12 to 6 time restricted feeding window where I will break my fast at noon. I'll have something to, honestly, I use a lot of the foods in Ketoterian, and I do a cyclical Ketoterian approach where typically 3 to 4 days a week I'm in ketosis. And then the other days of the week, I'm moderating my carbs and basically having more sweet potatoes, more fruits, rice, things like that. But then I can go back into ketosis because I built that metabolic flexibility first.
Now, with your carbs, I know a lot of people, they're just very carb confused, like, because
Yeah.
it's like, this carb is bad, this carb is good. What is your take on carbohydrates, and what kind of carbs do you recommend on the Ketotarian diet?
So we all have different tolerances to carbohydrates. So some people are very carb sensitive. They're carb intolerant. So they don't handle many carbs. Like, for example, like any one of my patients that's insulin resistant, they would not be able to have as many carbs that I could get away with. My blood sugar will be fine. It will come up a little bit when I'm having it and then come back down. Theirs will come up and they'll like go really high and then they won't come down as well. So they sort of are not as carb tolerant. So it depends on who you're talking to. It depends on the impact it's having on how they feel, how's their energy, how's their digestion, and then their blood sugars and some metrics like that. But generally speaking, I think the safer carbohydrates are going to be sweet potatoes, meaning by safer, I mean you'll find that
They're not going to spike the insulin.
Yeah. And more people, they'll be tolerable to more people. Sweet potatoes, yams, like tubers, like that, and lower fructose fruits like berries, citrus, berries like raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, and citrus fruits like grapefruits.
What about like vegetables like butternut squash being on a higher carb ratio, or green beans, or, I mean, you're getting carbs there, right?
Yeah, you are. You're getting carbs. And I think that would be also under that safe, meaning it's going to be most people tolerate that. Now, what I talk about in Ketotarian is this concept of fiber. I mean, fiber is by its very definition a carbohydrate. So most people, the fiber is actually really important. It's going to help microbiome diversity, bacterial diversity of the gut. It's going to help satiety. It's going to help lower risk factors for certain diseases. It's actually a good thing. So as long as you're getting it from a real food, to not count the fiber as your total carbs. So we talk about net carbs if you're getting it from real foods like plant foods. So that's what I would say, because some of this fiber-rich foods, people need it, and I don't think that they need to be so concerned about the high carb content of these plant foods because it's mostly fiber, and you're not getting a bolus of sugar from them. It's pretty well tolerated.
What would you say to people out there that are drinking their breakfast, or they're juicing, they're doing shakes? What is your take on that, with that and digestion? How does it affect?
I think that can be fine. It depends on where your baseline is. How's your digestion? How do you feel after it? I, in a way, prefer people to chew their food and kind of get that connection between the gut and the brain, and the gut's your second brain. And there's a big, obviously discussion about that. But I think getting that gut brain axis working well, chewing your food, getting those hormones, getting those enzymes secreted properly, chewing is powerful for that. But that's not to say you can never have a smoothie. And I have a lot of like keto smoothies in Ketoterian and the inflammation spectrum. So people can do that. But
It's probably different than juicing. Juicing,
oh,
they're,
it is. Yeah. Cause you're
yeah,
right. Cause you're blending up the whole food and you're getting the fiber, you're getting
you're
whole
getting
foods in there.
everything.
Yeah. The juicing, if any juicing, I would say the juicing's good for people that have sensitive gut sometimes, but I would just juice greens predominantly. And then like maybe ginger and citrus. So you're not getting tons of fructose or fruit sugar all at once. So I prefer, smoothies over juices and then more vegetables than fruits, generally speaking.
Wow. So how excited are you about your new book coming out?
So excited about this. This is actually something I've been working on for a long time. And to really get this information out to people, I'm really excited about it. But yeah, it comes out October 15th. It's on pre-order now, depending on when people listen to this in the future with podcasts. Yeah.
This is actually going to be fairly quick.
Cool. So
Yeah.
inflammation spectrum, they can go take the quiz now. And yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. So what about your online course? Do you have, can you walk people through
Sure.
what it's
Yeah.
about?
So my day job isn't writing books. It's seeing patients, doing the online webcam consults. So it's typically one-on-one, and that's typically what I do Monday through Thursday. But there's only so many hours in the day for all of us humans. So I realize that I can't reach everybody that we want to reach. So we created something we've been working on for a year, is these online functional medicine group classes. So we can have 100 people online around the world in a time that would take us to see one patient, because they can just listen, be educated, be informed. So we're drop shipping blood labs for them. They're getting blood labs in their local town. And then we give them recommendations based on their labs. It's all HIPAA, patient confidential compliant. So they can't see each other's health information. It's all private. It's just the person. But I'm able to show them a functional medicine perspective on these blood labs that they've had run, and say, okay, this is what this means if this is high. This is what this means if this is low. And they each have an action plan based on their labs. And I can get all of that stuff done in a fraction of the time because I'm educating them en masse. So yeah, I'm really excited. We hold one a month. So my day job still seeing patients one-on-one, because that's where the predominance of what people want. But there may be people that want to do the online class because they maybe aren't ready for one-on-one, or because we can lower the time, we can make it more cost effective, more affordable, more accessible to more people around the world. So I'm extremely
That
excited
is
about this
super
online group
cool.
class. Yeah.
So super cool. I don't know why this came to me, but the blood does not lie. It's
That's
important
right.
to get those blood tests. And, because we all have different blood types, everything's different in our bodies. It
Yeah.
affects differently. It's fascinating.
So fascinating. We can look at inflammation. We can look at hormones. We can look at all this stuff we're talking about in this episode. We can drop ship the labs and get them that information about their health.
Wow. I have so much loved having you on today. This has been such a fascinating conversation with you. And I just love and want to acknowledge how well versed you are in functional medicine. And I just feel like your knowledge goes beyond, I have to say it, most functional medicine doctors. So I just got to say, I
Thank
think
you.
you're the best. And
Oh, thank you.
I have definitely researched and had a lot of top-notch people on my show, but you really, when I was reading your articles on Mind Body Green and looking into everything that you had online, I was so impressed. So
Oh, thank you so much for your kind words. That really means a lot to me. I love what I do for sure. So I'm glad that it shows.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everybody so much for listening, and check Dr. Will Cole out. I will leave how to get a hold of him in the show notes, and maybe we'll all see you in class.
Yes, I would love that.
Awesome. Thanks everyone.